Hi, it's KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guests today are three members of the Guild Writers Group in Cedar Rapids, one of whom has published a delightful memoir about her life and horses. First off, let me welcome John and Sandra Hudson back to the show. Been regular guests. John and Sandra, nice to have you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And Carole Gauger, whose memoir is entitled From Livery to Lipazzans. Carole, welcome.
Thank you very much.
I've been reading the book, and I find it just delightful, and I'm excited to dig into it.
Well, that's nice of you to say. I appreciate that.
Before we do that, John and Sandra, if you would, just sketch out for me a little bit of what the Guild Writers Group does. I know you meet at the Czech Museum.
That's right. And Sandra and I founded this group several years ago, and the Czech Museum hosts our meeting place. Sandra, why don't you say something about how it got started and what's happening?
Well, we meet every fortnightly. We're a group of between 12 and 14, depending on the day. And we read for a period of about 8 or 9 minutes, and then we have a critique of what we've read. And the group so far has published several books, and Carole's is the latest. Her memoir about her life, 60 years as a horsewoman. And so it's a pretty exciting story.
Carole, I know that you grew up in Cedar Rapids, yes, or Cedar Rapids area. Yep. Now I know that a lot of your work with horses and your stables were in Michigan and just Michigan?
30 years in Iowa and 30 years in Michigan.
Okay, all right. But then you returned, obviously, because you're here. But you one of the things that you did is you were instrumental in really creating a program for the famous Lipazzan horses to be bred and show and grow in the United States.
I did. In 1956, my husband was in the Army in Germany, and we were both horse lovers, so we wanted to go to the Spanish riding school in Vienna, and we bought tickets and enjoyed that so much, it never occurred to either of us that I would ever own Lipazzans, but that's what happened.
So I want to talk about those first few famous horses as we go along. But let's start at the beginning, because you buried the lead a little bit. You said, "Well, I've always loved horses," but it goes far beyond that. The first few pages of your book talk about you as an elementary school student asking mom and dad for a pony, like we all did. But unlike most of us, you never gave up.
I never gave up. I asked for a pony for Christmas every year, and my folks would say, "We live in town, we can't have a pony." And I would get Barbie dolls or something, which I didn't want. Anyway, when I started saving my money, unknown to my parents, and finally when I was 15, I had enough money to buy a horse at Upmeyer's livery stable. It was a horse I'd fallen in love with. He was a very tall Palomino part saddlebred horse, very comfortable to ride. So I told my parents I had enough money, I was going to buy a horse, and I'm thankful now they didn't forbid me to do that. They went along with my plan. We went out and bought that horse and picked him up and brought him to Cedar Rapids, and I found a pasture to board him in. And that was the start of my life with horses.
It wasn't just buying the horse, because like you said, you had to find a place for him to live, and you did all of that, again, kind of under your parents' noses, so that you just were able to present it to them kind of as a fait accompli.
And I rode my bicycle out every day to take care of the horse, about a mile. And my parents were very kind to me, but they said, "Don't ever ask us to help you support that horse. It's all on you." So I worked at the Rittber stand and found a way to pay for my horse. But a year later then, I was in a stable where I saw people really mistreating a black saddlebred. And I would watch this terrible treatment of throwing this horse on the ground and choking her, all different things. So I finally decided I had to buy that horse to save her life. I don't know what my plan was. I don't think I had a plan. I just think I needed to save her life. She was living in such misery. So I bought her and had a terrible time getting her home. She didn't lead well. She didn't do anything well. But I finally got her to the stable where I was keeping my horse. And took me a year to get her broke to ride, but I persevered. And she finally, the first year, we started going to horse shows. And I don't know where this came from. I decided I wanted to go to horse shows, so I did. And the first year we won 1 blue ribbon. And I thought, well, that was wonderful, great fun. And the next year, she won 11 blue ribbons in a row. So she was an outstanding horse. I just got lucky. And then, surprisingly enough, people watched me win all these classes, started asking me to train their horses. And I was like 18, and I just could hardly believe it. So I started riding other people's horses, and they paid me for it. And that was just great fun for me. Started my life.
So you own a couple of horses,
Right.
and you've been training horses. How at what point did you become a trainer and a breeder and have all your own stables and the big operation in Michigan?
Well, I started out just training horses for other people. And so that worked out well. And I started winning with horses other people couldn't win with. And I got a little reputation for being able to do that. So I kept getting unruly horses that no one could train, and I found that kindness worked well and determination. So that went on for quite a few years, and then went to a stable to train horses, Iowa Valley Stables in Marengo, and trained saddlebred horses there for quite a few years. And then got a job offer to go to Michigan and train Egyptian Arabians, and it was way too good an offer to pass up. So moved to Michigan and started training these Arabians, which we were showing nationwide in Canada and all over the United States with these horses. And they were such great horses that I won a lot and kept getting more and more famous, so to speak, so that I came a day when I thought I was making a lot of money for the owners of that farm. Maybe it was time for me to go out on my own. So my children and I bought a place, built a horse barn with the help of friends, and started taking in horses to train and started winning a lot. And one thing led to another, and we had to enlarge the barn from 7 stalls to 22, and my business just kept growing from there.
Now, you mentioned, of course, the Arabians, which are, a well-known breed of horse, even to people maybe that,
Right.
Aren't that fond or not familiar with horses. But, of course, another breed that I think everyone, particularly all of us of a certain age, are the Royal Lipazzan horses, who originated in Austria, and you said that, and I noticed this in the book too, that even though they're in Austria, the stables are called the Spanish stables.
Yes. The first ones, when they started, they crossed Andalusians from Spain with the local Austrian horses, and then kind of created their own breed. They wanted something very noble in appearance that was very athletic. And so that's what they bred for 450 years.
Your book explains how the Lipazzans almost died out a couple of times because of World War I and World War II.
That's
and
right.
that General Patton was instrumental in making sure that they were preserved in the closing days of the war. But there were just a tiny handful of them that made their way across the Atlantic to the United States, and you ended up with one.
Well, very few came here until the Spanish riding school, after the 2 wars, suddenly became an entity that had to make money. Before that, it was always the royal monarchy that supported the Lipazzan stable. Suddenly they had to make money, so they started selling some to people in America. They sold 20 to a lady in Washington, and then 20 to a man in Chicago, Illinois. And so that was the beginning. And then there were other horses that came over with soldiers after the war. They would bring a Lipazzan or two. So there was very few in the beginning, 4, 5, 6. And then these two stables suddenly had 20 that were breeding Lipazzans, so then they started getting a few more each year.
And you came into possession of one of these, and he was considered untrainable, was he not?
Well, yes, he had come from the stable in Washington. He was bought by a woman in Michigan, and he as a yearling, so he was just a baby. So when he was 3 years old, she traded him to a horse trainer that wanted him for a mare, and then this horse trainer taught him all kinds of tricks, but didn't do too much with him under saddle, didn't show him. Anyway, then he was sold to a family that knew nothing about horses, and his life just went downhill from there. When you don't know anything about horses and the horse knows 1,000 times more than you do, then you get into trouble. So I started giving riding lessons at this stable, and here was this Lipazzan stallion there that they beat with a baseball bat, and they had electrified his stall because he kicked and bit at the bars, and so he was getting electric shocks all the time. It was just pathetic. So they asked me if I would take him to train or have him euthanized. If I thought he was untrainable, that I'd have him put to sleep. Well, I knew enough about Lipazzans by that time that there was no way I was going to give up on that horse. So they brought him to me. He was a wild maniac at that time. He lived in my barn for 3 days and turned into a gentleman, and I ended up buying him, and he was the nicest horse I ever owned, and the best to ride and the best to train.
Of course, as someone who keeps horses, of course you breed horses. That's a big part of your business. What you did, it was a challenge being able to get him bred to another full-blooded Lipazzan because there weren't very many of these horses around.
That was true. I started looking for mares, and there were just so few in the United States. The ones at Temple Farm in Chicago, none were for sale. They were saving every one. The stable in Washington, I'm sad to say, had a terrible flood, and a dam broke, and the water went down through the stable and drowned all the horses. So my stallion had come from there, but now all the rest of those were dead. So it was really horrible. I spent 2 or 3 years searching for Lipazzan mares, and one thing led to another, and then finally Temple Farm decided to sell me a few mares because I was so dedicated.
And at this time, too, you were embarking on a project to register all of the Lipazzan stallions and half Lipazzans in the United States, which had to be a huge undertaking.
Well, that's right, because I was so used to showing purebred horses, saddlebreds or Arabians or Morgans, that I knew how important it was to have a registry for these horses so that they would remain purebred. And so I started the United States Lipazzan Registry with the help of a couple of friends, one lady in California, one lady in Nevada. And so we started to document every Lipazzan in America that we could find and create papers for those horses. And that was the beginning of what now I think they have about 1,000 horses in the registry.
Along the way, you mentioned your children. They also caught the horse bug. I suppose they grew up around horses, and they also have bred and shown horses, and took over one of your stables. Did they not?
No, I hate to say, they didn't. They showed horses with me all those years till they grew up. When they grew up, they both decided they wanted to do something else with their life. So that was sad to me. But my son decided he wanted to go to General Motors. I was training horses for a vice president there, and he got my son Jeff a very good job at General Motors, and so Jeff was there 42 years, so that worked out well for him.
He did okay then.
My daughter Vicki decided she was going to go in the Air Force. And so she did, and so she had a very good 20 years there. So they both still like horses, but they don't have any now.
Looking back over your career with horses, which is 60 years, give or take, what's kind of the one thing you want people who may not be familiar with horses or who've been around horses, what's kind of the one thing you want them to know or maybe take from your book?
Oh dear, that's easy to say. I want everybody to know horses are basically very quiet, gentle animals if they're treated right. If you abuse a horse, he might fight back, or he would give up and just be like a doormat. It would be pathetic. But if you treat them kindly, and if you're determined to train them and do it well, nicely, without abusing the horse, things come along very fast and turn out very well. So I've been trying to teach kindness all my life.
The book is entitled Livery to Lipazzans, and as I said, Carole, it's just a delightful read. Congratulations to you and John and Sandra. Congratulations to the writers group, too, for obviously, you all worked as kind of a team effort with editing and things like this. It's a really high-quality product.
Yes, we had numerous sessions where a smaller subgroup of people would join together, and we would together edit the manuscript over a series of, it was more than months. I think it was several years. And what came out of it was just a wonderful book. Carole is such a great writer.
Where is the book available?
It's available at Prairie Lights Books in Iowa City.
Amazon?
Yes, it's on Amazon. And Sandra, is it?
Those are the main two. Yeah.
Those are the main two.
And Sandra, regarding the Guild Writers Group, is this something that is open for new people to come?
Absolutely, absolutely. And they don't have to make a commitment. They can come, be a guest, see how we operate, decide if it's an organization that they would like to be part of. And if they are, we meet every fortnight, every 2 weeks, and for 2 hours. Because our sessions, the reading sessions are only 8 minutes, everyone does get an opportunity to read what they've written, because not everyone writes 8 minutes every time. Sometimes it's just a paragraph. And so it does not even have to be memoir. It's true that what we've published has been primarily memoir, but some people write poetry, some people write historical fiction. There's personal statements. There's all sorts of writing that takes place.
And if someone is interested in coming to a meeting, how do they find out the schedule? Times you mentioned every 2 weeks.
Yeah, just call the Czech and Slovak Museum.
Okay.
And they will put you in contact with the administrative assistant there, and she will get you to us.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to reading the next work that comes out of the Guild Writers Group, because everything thus far has been excellent, fun to read, and interesting stories. And Carole, your book is definitely atop that pile. So congratulations again on bringing this project to fruition, and I hope that a lot of people enjoy it.
Thank you, and I couldn't have done it without John and Sandra, because when I joined the group about 9 years ago, one of my German friends encouraged me. She wanted to write a book, and so I just went along with her for the fun of it, and I didn't think about writing a book at all. So I was just writing little short stories every week about horses I'd own, and before long, Sandra said to me, "Carole, this should be a book." So that was the start, and it was just a surprise to me, but I learned so much from them about how to write well, and one thing they taught me, not such long sentences. I guess I had very long sentences, so I learned a lot from them, and it turned out to be a book I'm proud of.
It's a delightful book, Livery to Lipazzans by Carole Gauger, available at locally if you'd like to buy that at Prairie Lights Books, or you can order it off Amazon. Well, this has been a delightful conversation, Carole. As I said, I'm really enjoying the book and all the stories about the many horses that you've owned and your experience with that. And good luck to the next project on the Writers Group, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
having
Appreciate
us.
it.
You can hear the Culture Crawl live on the radio most weekdays at 10:30, on demand at kcck.org/culture, or subscribe using your favorite podcast player. Watch our videos on the KCCK Facebook and YouTube channels. Our producer is Lydia Kilgore. The Culture Crawl theme is composed by Vivian Shanley. I'm Dennis Green, and I'll talk to you later.